So there's this guy called Jordan Peterson, who you've probably heard of already. He's a Canadian professor, psychologist, and he is the author of this book, 12 Rules for Life. And he's kind of been thrust into the spotlight recently, and he's become very much something of a celebrity. Turns out that Jordan Peterson is very good at marketing, and I've identified 5 key tactics that he has employed, which has led him to becoming so popular and finding so many raving fans, myself included. So, a few weeks ago, Naomi and I were in a bookstore and Jordan's book, 12 Rules for Life, was sitting proudly on the shelf. Now, I had very little reason to pick this book up on first glance, as it were, because I'd never heard of him before, didn't have a clue what the book was about. However, I remembered that someone on my Facebook friends list had posted a photo of this book a couple of weeks before that, saying that it was awesome and they'd learned lots from it and they recommended it. And so this is marketing lesson number 1, the importance of social proof, whether that takes the form of a testimonial, a review, a recommendation, whatever it is. Essentially, someone is putting their reputation on the line by endorsing you and your products and your services. And we have to remember that it takes quite a lot to do that. For someone to take the time and the effort to proudly say, yes, I recommend this thing, that's quite significant. And as business owners, we need to be constantly reminding ourselves that it is important for us to be telling our prospects why they should invest in us, but it's so much more powerful if the same message comes from someone who has actually been there and done that. Someone who is a customer or a client who has been so happy with the product or service that they've gone to the lengths of recommending us. In the case of Jordan's book, it wasn't just this Facebook recommendation that pushed me over the line to buying it. When I picked it up off the shelf, I naturally flipped it over to read the blurb, expecting to see Jordan's description of his own book. But instead, there was nothing of the sort. There was just a list of praise for Jordan Peterson by reputable sources like the New York Times and the Observer. Just sort of 5 or 6 quotes basically saying how awesome he is. So this praise and the lack of any description actually did 2 things. One is it cemented the fact that Jordan was a big deal, because not only did someone I know recommend him, but these really reputable sources also, recommended him. And it also sparked my curiosity because it's not many books that don't have any sort of description on the back cover. And so immediately my intrigue kind of peaked. The book in itself is awesome and I would recommend it to pretty much everyone. But from a marketing perspective, having a published work like this, as valuable as it is in its own right, it's the perfect springboard into leading your prospects and now your book readers into other types of content and kind of bringing them into your world in a more significant way. And so even before you finish reading a book like this, you have a really good idea of what Jordan's all about, all about his beliefs and his values, and you can make a decision whether you are aligned with those beliefs and values yourself. In the case of this book, even before the end of the first chapter, I decided I was very much on board and I wanted to find out more about Jordan Peterson. So I did the natural thing and went to Google. Interestingly, one of the first things that appeared in the search results was a video of an interview he did with a Channel 4 journalist, which I would later find out to be one of the more controversial media appearances he'd made, which thrust him into the spotlight. And this is where we come to the second big marketing lesson from all of this. This video was long form. It was 30 minutes long on YouTube. And yet I watched the whole thing. I was completely gripped by it, but I would probably be less likely to watch all of that video, or certainly a significant portion of it, had I not read Jordan's book first. And remember, I still hadn't finished Jordan's book at this point. But crucially, I was a bit further along in the know, like, trust process. I'd already decided that I wanted to get to know Jordan a little bit more, and so I was perfectly happy to invest a bit more time doing so in this other medium. And the most important thing was that this video and countless others, which I'll talk about in a second, were all freely available and very easy for me to find. It didn't take me long at all to start consuming more content and learn more about Jordan Peterson and put more of his sort of teachings into practice. And so it's really important for anyone involved in marketing to make sure that they've got content at the ready all of the time, so it's really easy for people to go and find out more about them. So after that first 30-minute video, and after I'd given my brain some time to digest all that information, I went and looked for more. In fact, I didn't really have to go looking for more video content because YouTube just recommended it all to me. It turned out that Jordan was in hundreds of videos on YouTube, both on his own channel, which included lectures that he'd recorded from his time at university, but also lots of interviews that he'd done as well. And so again, there was just pretty much endless amounts of content for me to consume, which was awesome. But the third marketing lesson comes from the messages in Jordan's videos, what he actually talks about throughout these hours and hours of content. What I discovered was that he was incredibly consistent. After I started reading more of the book and then going back to YouTube and then going back to the book, I came across the same ideas and the same concepts and, probably most importantly, the same stories. He would tell a certain story in the book, which I would then hear him talk about in a YouTube video, or vice versa. Jordan Peterson has a very specific set of values and beliefs. That's why he's become so popular. And so it's really important for him to remain consistent with those messages no matter where he's appearing and no matter how he's marketing himself. From a consumer's perspective, however, this also has the added benefit of kind of bolstering their learning. And so again, I would read something in the book and then perhaps, it would have drifted from my memory, but then once he talked about it again in a YouTube video that I was watching, the learning was kind of compounded and solidified. The other knock-on effect of this is that it separates out your audience, because if you stick to your guns and you have really strong values and beliefs about whatever it is that you do, you will automatically, by default, and kind of effortlessly in a way, separate out the people who really don't want what it is you're offering and don't agree with you and wouldn't be a good fit for you and your business from those who are the complete opposite and who will go on to become raving fans. So Jordan Peterson has got thousands of people like myself watching his videos on YouTube, which is great. His audience is massive, it's leading people through this know, like and trust process, and it's extremely important. But as great as this is, it's probably not adding much to his bottom line. I could be wrong about that, but he's not really selling anything at this stage. So how does that gap become bridged? The answer is, quite simply, he just asked people to go and buy something of his. He has a couple of programs and courses and personality tests on his website, and as I went through these different videos, I noticed that a few times he would mention them and kind of not urge people to go and do them, but simply suggest that they could go and do so. So that's what I did. I went and bought one of these programs because I trusted Jordan. I'd gone through that process and I had no objections whatsoever to going and buying more of his stuff, because I decided after this medium-term process of consuming this content that I was very much on board. And so marketing lesson number 4 is about calls to action and upselling, which you should be doing all of the time, because it's very unlikely that I would have come across the other things that Jordan Peterson had to offer, his programs and other products, if he hadn't mentioned them. A lot of business owners I come across are quite reluctant to ask for the sale or to offer other stuff to existing customers or in fact, complete strangers. But it's something that we need to do, because simply if we don't do that, then they're not going to know. And so the 5th and final marketing lesson from Jordan Peterson. So he's got all of this content out there. He's got his books and he's got his programs and hundreds of hours of videos on YouTube. So he's already leagues ahead of the competition for the most part. But in fact, he actually goes one step further again by repurposing his content. And he repackages up the same content into a different medium to make it even easier for people to consume this content and get on board with what he's talking about. In my case, it was his podcast. He's had his podcast for a long time by the looks of things, but he only mentioned it in a video that I watched a couple of weeks ago. So perhaps, Jordan, you should mention it more. But as soon as I heard that he had a podcast, I thought, excellent. I listen to podcasts all the time, especially like if I'm, driving and stuff like that, it's another way for me to consume content where I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. And crucially, this podcast is an amalgamation, as he says, of, previous lectures and interviews. It's basically 100% repurposed, which I think is great because, again, it just opens the door up and makes it so much easier to just remain in his world. So there's the 5 marketing lessons from what Jordan Peterson does. What does this mean for the future? Well, disappointingly, about a month ago, I learnt that he just finished a UK tour and I'd missed all the dates, which was really disappointing. But at least I know that next time he does so, I'm going to be there. Even if he only does one date, one venue that's hundreds of miles away from me, I am definitely going to be there. But, and this is the most important lesson, I wouldn't have been in this state of, being completely up for buying a highly priced thing if I hadn't gone through this whole process beforehand. The exact same applies to you. Your clients and prospects, every one of them, is each at a different point in their individual buyer's journey. Some of them don't have a clue who you are. Some of them might not even know that they have a problem that you can fix. And some of them are going to be all the way at the other end of the spectrum, and they're going to be your raving fans who are going to be, loyal customers for life and who are, more than happy to recommend you to their colleagues, friends, and family. And there's all manner of gradations in between as well. And so we as business owners and marketers need to treat them that way. We need to make sure that we're marketing to our prospects and our existing customers in lots of different ways so that we appeal to all of these different gradations along the buyer's journey. It's no good just making content for your existing customers, for example, because then you're not going to bring any new people in, or it's going to be less likely. And conversely, this is what most business owners do. If you're only marketing to brand new people and you're only searching for new prospects and clients and you're not marketing or offering any more stuff to people who've already bought from you, then you're really missing a trick. Creating different types of videos for these different positions in the buyer's journey is something that I talk about a lot in my book, Grow Your Business with Video. Chapter 9, the whole chapter is dedicated just to this. So if you'd like to learn more about making video content specifically designed for different places in the buyer's journey, which you should, then click the link in the description below to get a copy of my book. And if you enjoyed this video, which I hope you did, then feel free to click the like and subscribe buttons respectively. I'll see you in the next one.